Hello and welcome to the Old.St Labs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Woodhead, and very happy to have you with us today. This one is a bit different. We are starting in a bit of a new direction. We are calling this the one about AI, and you get to have two different people on the podcast with me today rather than just one guest. And those people are my business partner, Rob Lynch.
Hi there.
And our technical consultant, Ben Burch.
Hi there.
So, as I've explained in a bit of an explainer pod that you can find online as well, this podcast is more about AI and how we see the world of AI at the moment. We've realized that many of our clients and many of the people we talk to every day are kind of always talking about different models that are coming out, different products that are out there, the pitfalls that are out there, and the opportunities that are out there. So we thought we'd let you into our conversations that we have fairly regularly about what's going on, what we see as interesting, what we see as difficult, and hopefully give you some insights along the way. The idea is to be jargon-free and kind of non-technical as possible, and that's my job mainly, and the other guys are going to help me along the way. So, first of the series is going to be about vibe coding. But before we get into that, it'd be great maybe if you guys could do a little bit of an introduction to yourselves as it's the first one. So, Rob, why don't you start off?
Yeah, sure. It was a very slick intro, by the way, Rob. So I'm Rob Lynch. I am Rob's co-founder at Old.St Labs. So I've founded a startup in 2016 and founded Old.St Labs with Rob in 2020. And my job now is to hopefully stay on top of things like AI and to help clients navigate the waters that we currently find ourselves in.
And Ben?
Hi, so my name's Ben Burch. As Rob said, I help out Old.St on some kind of technical aspects of projects. My career has spanned various industries, but always been on the kind of technology and operations side of business. So it's very much the kind of implementation side of technology. And clearly at the moment, AI is a topic on every agenda, and trying to navigate that and stay ahead of it is well, to be honest, a pretty full-time job, but trying to make sense of it all is something I spend a lot of time doing.
Brilliant. Thanks, chaps. So we decided on vibe coding as the first one, the first topic of conversation. I think mainly because we see it quite a lot now. Many people are coming to us with vibe coded products. But before we get into it, because there'll be plenty of people who are watching this who won't understand what vibe coding is. So, Rob, maybe you can start and just kind of give us a bit of what is vibe coding and what's it going on about?
Yeah. So I actually spent a little bit of time looking into this beforehand, and so the term is only just over a year old. February 2025. A guy called Andrej Karpathy, who is the one of OpenAI's co-founders, came up with it. And what he meant by it was developers developing apps with an AI assistant. Developers that should be paying attention to the underlying code, but then at some point you just lose it into vibes and you just let the LLM, you trust the LLM, the AI, I should say, to write the code for you, and you don't pay too much attention to what it's actually doing. So that was the original meaning. Now, because there are platforms like Lovable, Replit, Base 44, and so on, it's largely used to mean any layman, as not really a developer doing it, but lay people who wouldn't understand the code even if they went into it. And the growth of these platforms has meant, and the growth in terms of the capabilities of these platforms has meant that anyone can just spin up an app very, very quickly, and it's been phenomenal for lay people to, for the first time, really be able to build exactly what they want without having to rely on a developer all the time. So that's my brief intro?
Yeah, it's now, since we've seen some of the products you've seen, so the likes of Lovable, Replit, and so on, they've been around for, just over a year, really. And we've seen it a lot, haven't we, in terms of people coming to us having no technical background and building something quite technical. And it's quite alluring. They're pretty good in terms of their standard of what they can do from a visual perspective, Ben.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's worth understanding that developers have always had tools they've used. And it's a very long time ago that you had kind of what we would think of as like autocorrect or autocomplete type functions on, effectively the kind of word processor of development, so the IDE. And this is just a massive extension to that. Instead of typing the start of a word and getting the word finished or the sentence finished, you get the application finished, for sort of oversimplifying. But so that's been around and it's been evolving for a really long time. And it's, there's no question it's changing the face of the market and the way things are developed hugely.
Yeah, I guess that's the interesting piece, isn't it? Of like, there's the bit which the developers have used, and the developers are able to Rob's point, vibe code, but they know what they're doing and they can see and understand what's been vibe coded, so they can see the code and understand it and say whether it's good or bad. Whereas the what we're really describing as vibe coding, which is an individual who doesn't have technical abilities building something, they can't look under the hood. They don't know what they're building and don't understand necessarily the problems that await them in the future if they use it. But it does get them quite far along the road, certainly in prototyping, because they've come a long way. Even in the last year, they've come a long way, right?
Yeah, and let's not forget, even a really experienced developer will also use libraries and modules and packages that they'll just draw into their project and use. They don't write the packages; they haven't for years. So this kind of idea that this sort of hands-off approach is really just an evolution of kind of what's been going on to a point. Okay, the gap now between I typed something in a prompt and instead of seeing a piece of code, I see an output is obviously a much bigger leap. And within that, the risks are, in that big leap, more stuff happens that you aren't aware of. But it's kind of an extension of what's been going on, just tidied up and turned into a really great interface. And as we know, really great interfaces can often hide, lots of
Shoddy
things.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is worth doing is just to really draw the distinction between a developer who's using things like Claude Code, so AI coding assistants to help them code, and fundamentally understanding what the LLM is doing, and then a layperson vibe coding. Because however you kind of split the vocab, you might say the layperson's vibe coding and the developer is doing AI assisted coding, or I think they sometimes call it vibe engineering or something, but it doesn't really matter what you call it. But the developer doing it is in a very, very different position to a non-developer doing it. But just as long as they read it, and that's the key thing, because it's not necessary to get things working a lot of the time. But if they do know what's going on and can just shepherd the AI and make sure the AI isn't going off on one, as we know it can, then it can be very, very powerful, because it's velocity increasing rather than this kind of democratization of AI, which is again very, very helpful, but when we might come onto this, a bit dangerous.
Yeah, I guess it would be. Sorry, go on, Ben.
Well, I was just going to make a point, which is sort of devil's advocate. One of the IT industry's challenges has always been and this is something I know, we collectively work on all the time, is like, how do you take a business requirement and translate it so the development team, however, whatever terminology you want to use, so the developer actions it in the correct way. So that's how the industry has sort of done a lot of work to sort of set itself up, take the requirement, turn it into something, get a developer to action it. There's been automation at the developer to code bit, but there's not been this bit up front. And what these tools have done is they might be crunching through some of the back end stuff a bit quicker, but they have done is put this is what I want to happen in the power of the user. And that's a big shift in terms of stuff. And, as we know, you can get a client coming to you with a working prototype of this is exactly what I want, not a sketch of a concept with a fairly disconnected sort of ethereal idea of or what it might do. So it's definitely a big shift.
So I get that's the interesting question of what are we seeing now in terms of the different type of person who's coming towards us? Because I would suggest there's more people out there who are having a go at this, right?
Yeah, I would say that. So I suppose this what we used to have, as Ben said, was entrepreneur with, we always used to call it napkin to launch. So an entrepreneur with an idea on a napkin that we help them flesh out, and we talk through and work with them to build the app. That still happens, but as you say, if they come with a prototyped vibe coded app, that's very different. And we do end up often taking it apart and rethinking it before building it. But we're starting from a very different base to where we were. So that's on the entrepreneurial side. That's pretty different. I'd say that more established businesses do that less so. I haven't seen too much, Rob.
Yeah, I've heard anecdotally of businesses doing it, and we certainly were at the AWS conference recently, and they spoke about, we've met these guys who have a platform to allow vibe coded products to be gatewayed onto the data of a business. But yeah, I think we haven't seen a huge amount of that from a large business perspective. But I do think from an entrepreneurial perspective, it is bringing the risk profile down for them building a product, because before they would, have to spend a reasonable amount of money to get their idea from napkin to launch, as you pointed out, Rob. But now they can kind of get to a prototype without spending, $20 on Claude for a month.
Yeah, and just to be clear, depending on what it is, they can launch it, right? It depends on the industry, it depends on a bunch of things. But if all you need is a basic MVP, ideally you want someone to have a look at it and audit it, like we do at Old.St Labs. But ideally you want to do that and just make sure that there aren't any massive howlers in it. But you can get something functional which you can put into production. It's more a question of what happens afterwards.
But then there's, as Ben will attest, there's an emotional side to the conversation after that, because it goes from, it's cost me $20 to get to this level. Now you want to build it properly, or you're telling me there's a problem with it. I don't know because I'm non-technical. What's it going to cost me to get this actually working?
Yeah. We've seen that, I guess a few years ago, we saw that massively with hardware and infrastructure, which was, it didn't used to be the code or the development or stuff that blocked people launching a product. It was they simply couldn't buy. You had to buy servers and hardware and racks of equipment, and now you can spin up, turn on infrastructure per second billing for pence, pence per second. And so we've seen that kind of, everything moves closer to the consumer or the customer, right? So it used to be, go and spend £10,000 on a server. What's on it? Nothing. Start from scratch, right? And that was such a barrier. And now the barriers are dropping and dropping and dropping, but we still have this perpetual problem, which is you can get a really long way now, really quickly, And how do you get the last bit over the line? And you have this push pull of like Rob says, notion. I spent $20 getting this far, but it's going to cost me, I don't know, make up a number, $10,000 to get me to the next stage. It just seems it's sort of breaking the market or fragmenting the market and making it really hard to navigate.
We also have to have conversations about what the endpoint of vibe coding is. To Rob's point, you can take some of these products to market, right? If it's basic, it's not really touching, deep, difficult, data points. It can potentially go on there. But the majority can't, because they need to have, security around them. They need to be able to be scalable. And a lot of these products don't end up being like that. I heard anecdotally that the reason that Apple is taking such a long time to review a lot of apps at the moment is because there's such a backlog from vibe coded apps that are out there. And it's not only are there more apps for them to look at, but also there's more issues with the apps that are coming to the App Store.
Yeah, was it Apple or Google that's refusing vibe coded apps? But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think the issue is that anyone that's really used an LLM can, for any reason, can kind of take that experience, and there is a mirror when it comes to vibe coding, where it'll produce a lot, it'll be coherent in of itself, but the issue comes when you have to put an entire product together, and often you'll end up with something that is way bloated, and you'll have gone in different directions and different tangents trying to build different features, and there'll be a ton of obsolete code sitting there, which every single time you try and add a feature and make it more complicated, it's got to work with, the AI has got to work with its own ugly beast, basically, to try to add on to it. Yeah. And if you ever get any human, if you go too far down that route, getting humans to try and unpick what's been done is incredibly tough.
It is a bit like conventional software development, though. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like I think the reality is just speeding up what happens in a normal cycle with less visibility in that process. So, you can build an application with a normal, software team, build it through loads of steps. As time goes on, you will build up some form of technical debt. You will want to refactor at some point. The difference is now that can happen in an afternoon, whereas that would have happened over the course of a year. Now it'll happen in an afternoon. I suppose the other difference is now you can just say, rewrite that, and there's a cost, as it were, but it's different. I mean, that's how I see it. I feel like this is, so in the same ways, it's also highlighting the problems that you have in conventional software development exist here. It just all gets compressed, and the time it happens really quickly. So it's a yeah. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, I think they definitely have parallels. I would argue that there are differences, and I think that especially if I think the difference is, like, again, it's this slight talking past each other in a way, because you've got your vibe coding and your sort of AI assisted coding, and if a product's been vibe coded to the max, as I have done, and created something completely unmaintainable, then I think that's quite a different position from if you have developers that know what they're doing, and they're doing sort of spec driven development, and they've got their agents doing things that they know, that they understand fundamentally, and the whole thing has at least human the right amount of skilled oversight. That's when I think you can do things like, well, rewrite in an afternoon might be an exaggeration for complicated projects, but I think that's where the real velocity gains can come in.
So we are where we are in 2026. Things move incredibly fast in this AI world that we're in. These products are pretty good at the moment, but they only really get to prototype or small products that you can use internally. Where do you see the future? Where do you see this going? Do you think it ends up eating our lunch and taking over software development completely? Or do you think it's just something that another tool to people to use, and it stays in the same, the market kind of stays the same otherwise?
I can't see, if we look at any other AI related evolution that we've seen, the pace is untouchable, right? The pace of change is relentless. If I take my own experience with working on Lovable and putting some apps through, I would go mad in first iteration. Literally, I would want to punch my screens. I would want to snap my keyboard.
And you're not normally an angry man, so
yeah, exactly. I never overreact. But now, I've recently put together 2 applications, which are, internal facing, kind of smallish things. That experience has been fundamentally different. Now I've approached it differently, because I've used the tools more, and so I don't just start with one thing. I plan it out much more, but it's fundamentally different. So I can't see how the next iteration, we probably haven't got time to touch on the Claude mythos kind of model discussion, but that next iteration of models, I can't see a way where that doesn't take this on hugely, right? Because that's what's happening. How that folds into the whole commercial world and things that become more, who will take on the risk, who will take on the warranty, that type of thing. There's a whole other side to it, but it's hard to say that the pace of change and the improvement is not going to be there.
Yeah, I tend to agree, actually. Like, I think the change is happening. So the products get very, very complex, and that's one thing where the current version of Lovable or even Claude Code, if for a non-developer, would really struggle to produce something super complex. But change is happening at every level. The underlying models are getting better, and I think that Mythos is Anthropic have taken a different approach, and it seems that Mythos is just genuinely a step change from how previous models have been, and things are getting better at that level. They're getting better at the level of exactly how some of the vibe coding apps are harnessing that power. And even just at the level of the human skills, some of the ways of doing this, like again spec-driven development and agent skills and so on, are really just leveling people up, and so the overall impact of those improvements at different levels on velocity, and at the kinds of apps that become possible is increasing. I think that where you talk about eating our lunch, Rob, like hopefully not. I mean, I think that we have always prided ourselves on our ability to understand the client's business and add value to their actual business problem, rather than just turn out code. And I think that is that is where software development agencies need to be. I think that it's very difficult to see if all you are is a team of pure developers. It's hard to see that being a viable business model it might still be for a year, 2 years, I don't know, but into maybe 5 years out, it's pretty difficult to see. Very difficult to see, I'd say.
I think you've kind of, the last bit's hit the nail on the head, which is the AI revolution is taking is pushing and pushing down this kind of this avenue where any task where a human is working like a computer, software development, and lots of others, is the cost of doing that, or the value of that is increasingly lower. But there is a massive gap between someone who is running a business, even if they've actually got time to sit there and vibe code or whatever, which they don't, very few do, running a business and understanding the problem and drawing on experience and a relationship with other people to work through that challenge and turn something. Now it's going to shift where the kind of commercials are and where those things land. But the end point is, if everyone, there's lots of businesses that they outsource or offload a task to another business because they focus on their core. And so this will shift things, I think. I think it will shift things probably more to the human side of, let's understand your business, let's understand the problem, let's turn it into something, let's draw on experience from this project, that project, etc., and bring it together. Probably there'll be a reduction in the value of the actual coding element, but the value overall should still be there. It'll just be a pivot and a switch into where it is. And that'll be a messy, that won't be a kind of smooth linear progression. We've seen that forever. The $20 has got me this far, but I need to spend $10,000 to get me the next bit. Same problem, just a different shift.
And the one thing I'd add to that is, with all because Ben, you're talking about all the unlocks that have happened in the past when a new technological framework has come out that's enabled developers to do more overall qualitatively, but also more quicker. And then the cloud revolution, API revolution, all these things allow not just let's do the same in a quicker time, but they open up enormous sort of possibilities as to what else is possible. And we've seen a lot of that with the with LLMs embedded within products and agentic workflows, and just sort of really trying to sort of stitch an entire business together. But I think there's a lot that we don't know. There's the unknown unknowns as to what it's going to unlock as the models and all of that get better. So I think there's scope for some really, really interesting projects in the future, and I believe and hope that we will be in a pretty good position to play a role in some of those.
So instead of eating our lunch, we'll just have a different lunch. We'll be eating
pudding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think that was super interesting, and I think we're going to be aiming for half an hour each time we do these things. So I think we call it a day there, gents. Fantastic first conversation. You two always bring interesting insights to these things. So thank you very much. We will see everybody out there very soon. We'll be doing these hopefully on a fairly regular basis. If you do have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. You can to be as critical as you like, but also mainly around the topics you want us to talk about. I think we're going to be picking things in the zeitgeist, what's going on in the world of tech, especially around AI, to discuss. Mythos, it might be something that we bring up in a future episode once it gets released and isn't a danger to society. But yeah, if you've got any topics you'd like us to start on or discuss, then do let us know. Otherwise, we shall see you next time. Thanks very much.
Cheers. See you
soon. See you soon.